There we go. We are live on YouTube. Welcome to the Social Hour. My name is Nicole York. I am a photographer and digital artist, writer for Fstopper and ProEDU, and an author. And today I am here with amazing photographer and digital artist, award-winning, I should mention, as well as educator for ProEDU, Kelly Robitaille. Hi, Kelly.
Oh,
Thank you so much for joining me. As many of you might know, Kelly is also a co-host on the Photographers Roundtable, where we spend some time just critiquing work and trying to kind of give back to the photography community by educating ourselves and other people on, photography related things. But Kelly has been doing a lot more than that. When was it, Kelly, that you started? So you've been a retoucher, right, for a good amount of time now.
yeah, 2.5 years. Not a crazy amount of time, but a little bit.
So, yeah. And then when did you start so what Kelly is known for is her whimsy waifs, which is her kind of surreal photographic manipulations that result in these really beautiful kind of artistic renderings. And when did you get into that?
All right. So I've always drawn. So I consider myself an artist, but I don't consider myself an amazing artist. So I sketch and I draw and I do some painting, but I've always had these visions in my head of artwork that I wanted to create, and I just never had the artistic ability to really follow through. So I decided from an artistic point of view that I was going to take graphic design. Went into graphic design, started doing like product development and all this, and started to learn Photoshop. And then once I had kids, I had all this free time because I decided I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. So I had all this free time, and I'd always sort of had an eye for photography. And so I picked up a camera and started taking pictures of my kids. And then, of course, one thing leads into the other, right? So from taking pictures of my kids, then I'd find other people to take photos of, and started sort of developing this creative style using photography and stepping outside of the realm of like families and babies and children and that type of thing.
Right.
But I've always just had, again, this vision, and a lot of people liken it to Margaret Keane. I'll be honest with you, I had never seen her work until I started doing my artwork, and then so many people referred me, to it. So
sure.
And I think, again, it's one of those things where like there's no individually creative idea, right? There's
right
these perceptions of art and things that they want to create. And so I started, one day I was sitting at home. I forget what happened. I think I'd had a shoot and my kids were sleeping and I had all this spare time, and I sat down at my computer and I thought, here I have all these skills in Photoshop that I've learned through doing graphic design and, a bit of editing on my own personal style and aesthetic.
Sure.
And let's see what I can do. Let's push this a little bit further. And so I took these visions that were in my mind, and I started to just pot around and play with things in Photoshop and look at different tools. And it was, I wasted hours. This was probably, I'm going to say 4 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago. And I wasted hours. And it's like, I sat down, I started working, and I looked up and it's like midnight. And where has the time gone? And then I look at my screen and there's this piece of art that I've been wanting to create for my entire life. And it was perfect. And it was exactly what I wanted it to be, that I'd never been able to do before. And then it was just game over at that point. I was like, lock the kids in the bathroom and just spend, thank God they were in school, because I just spent every day taking old pictures from old shoots and manipulating them and, just trying to hone in. There's of course, stupid birds don't go talking, but, it was just this awakening of being able to actually reach your personal expectations of what you want your art to be. And it was just like, it was amazing, completely eye-opening. And then you just kind of grow from there. So then developing my own style, and then actually starting to create instead of just editing old art from old shoots, you know, actually starting to create your own art and create, you know, if I had a canvas in front of me, what would I want to put on that canvas? And that's sort of what I used it for. So I love it. It's my favorite thing. This makes me so happy to tell.
That is outstanding. I love that moment when you get so involved in what you're doing that the whole rest of the world just falls away and your entire being is focused on what you're making.
Oh, it's the best feeling. There's nothing like it. I mean, yeah, I have kids. They're okay, but like this, oh wow. No, I'm kidding. I love my kids, but I mean, it's the same.
Oh, my dogs.
Your baby, right?
It is. It is. It's just a brain. It's a brain baby instead of a body baby.
Baby. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So we already have, so Olga Tinyanyan is here and Sarah J is here. Hi, ladies. Welcome. If you guys have questions for Kelly, make sure that you leave them in the discussion. That way we can get to them and chat about them. So there seems to kind of be like an overall theme and tone to your work. So is there something that kind of pushes that vision or something that you're trying to say or explore? Like, where does that come from?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely more drawn to a dark aesthetic anyways, but my artwork is therapy for me. I dealt with a lot of trauma as a child, and I think I never went into therapy. And I think
Sure.
It's funny because when I look at the timeline of everything, I feel like I've become such a different person since I started creating this art. And I know that it does read very morbid and ominous, but it's not really intended to be morbid. It's just a way of me working through the things that I'm dealing with. And I've said this before in regards to my work. In my mind, of course, we all have our own stories when it comes to our artwork, but in my mind, through my stories, my subjects are currently going through things that we're obviously seeing immediately in a piece of artwork. But I also feel like there's an ending to that story, and I feel like it's an empowering story. It doesn't have to be a sad, disruptive story. There can be empowerment at the end of it. So
Sure.
It's my therapy. End of the day, I don't create this for anybody else. It's my artwork. I've just chosen to share it with lots of people. So
yeah, I mean, it makes sense when you have to kind of create for yourself first, right? Like you have to be invested in what you're doing. And there's this maxim that the more personal something is, the more universal it becomes, which makes sense because you have to be vulnerable to make something personal, right? And most people have probably experienced trauma or other things that make them connect to your images, because the people who really like your fans are like passionate fans. Like they really are. They are.
Yeah. And oh man, I have some real haters, but I have some real amazing supporters. And knowing that I have the backing of people that see the quality in my work and the story behind my work is pretty stellar. So
yeah, I agree. Is there something about, so getting into like the aesthetic, but then also the way that some people have like negatively responded. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I realize that there's a lot of symbolism. I don't know why I want to say symbology. It just sounds good. There's a lot.
Your tongue though.
This is symbology. Oh, and we have also Hannah Walker is here as well. Yay! So we have so many awesome ladies joining us in the comments section. So far, Sarah said, why are you drawn to the darker side? Which I feel like we covered a little bit, but if you want to expound on that, that's totally awesome. And she says, there's so much beauty in darkness. I love that you see and you show that. And Hannah says, I love that you're sharing your art with the world. I so relate to it. And Molly says, I'm all about dark.
Oh, see, but that's the thing. I think there seem to be these standards that are set in place where people feel like you have to shoot. It's either you're doing, you're shooting the homeless on the street, or you're shooting flowers and pretty girls and babies and families. And I don't think it has to be that. I mean, yeah, we can call ourselves photographers, but I often don't call myself a photographer. I often call myself an artist, because I think that that's what we're doing. We are creating art, and it doesn't matter if you're shooting a baby or a family, you're still creating artwork. And artwork, I mean, it's internal, and and for me anyways, why does everything have to be, and it's funny because I just finished saying to you that I walk around with like my rose colored glasses on, but I mean, I also think that that's a protective mechanism for myself as well. If I can walk around smiling and happy and jovial all the time, that doesn't mean from an internal point of view that I don't have my own things going on that I need to work through. And so on one hand, I'm like always laughing and trying to be super positive and trying to be super happy. I do have to work on the other side of things. And so we all have a little bit of darkness inside of us, right? So why push that? Why push that into the closet? There's no need for that. Let it out.
I agree. And it's sad that there are people who feel like that part is not just as valid to the human experience as the pretty romantic everything else. Like, that's still a very valid part of what it means to be human, and the kind of things that we endure and, are exposed to. All of that stuff needs to be explored as well. So I agree.
I think the issue is that when you put something beautiful and positive out into the universe, generally speaking, you get back positive remarks, right? And positive interactions. Obviously, you have like other photographers that are going to nitpick at things, but in general, like generally speaking, with the overall population, you put something pretty out, you're going to get positive remarks back. When you put something darker out, you tend to get darker commenting back, or people that don't understand, or people that have something negative to say, because it instantly, something clicks in them where they're not reading the story, they're just seeing something that makes them uncomfortable, and their instant reaction is to keyboard warrior and to express their discomfort with what you're creating. And so to not do that, because who wants to deal with keyboard warriors? I mean,
it's true. This is true.
It doesn't feel good to have someone speak negatively about your work. So
no.
Put out positive work.
Right. And I think too, people misunderstanding the point of it, like as if putting that out is somehow meant to make people depressed or make them sad, or so getting back to that, talking about, as we were, the aesthetic, but then also kind of how you build the characters, because they kind of are characters. Is there something about that wayfish, that kind of delicate frame that is draws you to it, that makes that kind of be the part of how you build these characters? Is there something there? Because I know there have been people who misunderstood that completely in the wrong direction. And when people, since you're an educator, when people kind of try to adapt your style, a lot of times they kind of miss the mark a little bit. And I get the feeling it's because they don't understand why you're going in that direction. And they might be afraid to kind of push the bar enough to reach that place. So number one, what is it that kind of draws you to that aesthetic? And then I guess the second part of that would be, what would you say to people who would like to explore that world and that look, about how you need to go about it in order to make it actually work and not provoke the kind of responses that unfortunately some of them are getting?
Right. I think for my art, again, it's a story that I'm trying to tell. And so by sort of delving into the darker, more macabre feeling, it all aligns with the story I'm trying to tell. But from my point of view, my story, these are individuals who are going through something, something's happening in their lives, and I need to be able to show a frailty. Mm-hmm. And we scroll through so many images every single day, and I want to stop people in their tracks. I want them to scroll and see something that makes them a little bit uncomfortable, and then to stop and look and want to know more of my story. And so for me to push the idea of fragility by making my subjects so tiny, that to me is the best way to do that, right? I'm exaggerating so many things. So it's not even about like body size. It's head size, it's eye size, it's, you know, fingers, it's the body shape, right? I mean, I pull everything in, I make giant hunchbacks, you know, like there's so many different elements that go into it. And I think people tend to focus on the singular thing, which is like, why are you making them so small? They were beautiful before. Yes, they were. And that's not, I'm not photographing these women. This isn't a direct reflection of who they are. It's my artwork. By the time this is done, they look like two completely different subjects.
Right.
When I'm shooting, and I mean, initially when I started doing this, I was going back to old work and re-editing. But every single person I did that with knew that I was trying to create artwork, and I had the okay to do that.
Right.
When I shoot my current work, when I work with models, they know that this is what I'm doing. So it's not like suddenly they're getting an image where they look nothing like themselves. I've made them, you know, super, super tiny. I've made their eyes massive. You know, it's not like they don't know that this is happening.
Right.
But it is a story that I'm trying to tell. And it's my, I mean, I've always been into cartoons. As a kid, I drew cartoons all the time. That's just ingrained in me, right? So it is cartoony and it is unrealistic, but not to the point. I think with the costuming and stuff too, it makes a huge difference. And so I think the problem that I see with people that take my course and then try to implement those techniques on their own work, and from a practice perspective, there's nothing wrong with what they're practice on whatever you can.
Sure.
Practice on a dog, practice on a kid, practice on a tree. I don't care. Practice, and that, but when you're putting it out onto social media, if there's not a story to go along with the image, it literally just looks like you're creating this emaciated person. And I mean, we live in a society where we are, I don't know, where, you know, body image hits us in the face all the time. And so I understand what the concern is, but there's just a big difference between art and just making somebody skinny. And I would never, even my own work, I'll go in and I'll, like portraits or something, I'll go in and I'll smooth out lumps and bumps, but I would never make someone skinnier in a portrait. And so there has to be a fine line. It's either artwork or it's a portrait, and you have to make sure that you know where you're going with your imagery. And I think that that's where a lot of my students seem to be falling into trouble, is because they're not following through with this idea of creating a story.
Right.
So
yeah, that makes sense. And hopefully for the people who are watching and who do watch in the future that love that style and kind of want to move into that realm, I hope they really take that to heart, because number one, the people that you're photographing, you're not photographing them in order to say anything about them. They're kind of like a framework for your character, right? Like for what you're trying to say.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then we have a few more comments coming in. So Hannah says, I equate the body frame as a commentary on the fragility of human existence and how easy we are to break.
For sure. Yeah. But that's the point, right?
Right.
How else do you express fragility? And if I did a self-portrait of myself and I'm a round lady, and that doesn't scream fragility, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I love my body and I love who I am. But when I'm trying to get a point across and a story across, it just doesn't work on the same level. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think I think you could still, obviously you can still get a story across, but it just, for my agenda, that's what I need to do.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And hopefully people will pay attention to that and recognize it. And so that some of the confusion about the purpose of how you're putting these images together kind of gets cleared up so that they can not do that anymore. And there will always be people who kind of jump on the hater bandwagon, but at least if the information is out there, you could be like, hey, just go look at the thing. I said it. I don't need to canvas this again with you.
I feel like this is a conversation that gets had all of the time, and it's gotten to the point where I just stop responding to people because I can't be bothered, which is probably not a good thing. But let people practice, and you can have an opinion, but we don't have to be hurtful and hateful, and we can ask questions and have, you know, a conversation about why you dislike something as opposed to just being hateful.
Right. Agreed.
And
Sarah says, the care and understanding Kelly took with my photo and the story she wanted to tell for me was beautiful. It empowered me and had nothing to do with body image.
No.
So that's really fantastic. And then Molly says, when you've got artists like Mark Ryden, I can't understand why people have an issue. It's like if it's a painting or cartoon and it's unrealistic, then it's fine, but not when it's a manipulated photograph.
Yep, it's true. And also, I think Mark Ryden, his aesthetic is more, I'm not going to say childlike, but like there aren't curves and there aren't like those elements in his artwork. And I think because I use women, and I think specifically because I show the before and after, and you could see that it's, you know, you can see breasts and hips and then you see the manipulation sort of taking those things away or creating a smaller frame. Whereas someone like Mark Ryden, when he paints, it's like a little kind of blocky, cartoony character, right?
It's all very childlike, right?
And there's no before and after to see, so he doesn't get those comparisons. So while I think of my art on a similar vein as that, I do understand that people are looking at it from a photograph to an edited photograph and not looking at it as base canvas to artwork. And that's how I view it. So
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, as a digital artist, and when you're using photography as your base, it's kind of easy for people to make that assumption that what you're trying to do is represent photorealism in a surrealistic way, but it's really not. It's just it's a form of art that just uses photography as a tool, right?
Yep, agree.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, which is I know something you're really passionate about and something that you've spoken about before, is this idea that people need to spend a little bit more time outside the box, right? Like this idea that creativity is kind of, it's easy to get trapped in what you see as only what's supposed to be out there, or that if you want to be successful or popular or whatever, you have to kind of mimic the things that are already getting attention. And your idea of creativity is a lot different than that, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that it's different than that. I don't have a problem with acknowledging work that you love and taking snippets of things that you love to create your own work. I just don't think that we push ourselves enough if we're just copying constantly, and we're these beautiful, amazing human beings, and we're intended to be individual. We're not intended to be sheep, and all have creative ideas and concepts. And it's like people are scared to do something different, and they're scared of the repercussions of doing something because someone might not like it. And when I first started doing this, I used to blast my work everywhere, and I got so much negativity, but I didn't care because I loved what I was doing and I knew what my intention was. And I think you just can't have that fear. And I think we often get stuck inside of this box because we're afraid to be different. And if people don't like it, then we're going to get shut out. And for me personally, I was doing family portraits and portraiture, and I was in my little community here in Ontario, and it's like you're keeping up with the local Joneses, you know, and you're trying to keep up with everyone, and this person's work is a little bit better than my work, and everyone's work kind of looks the same. And then when you stop and you overcome that fear of being different and you hop over that fence, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's true, like the grass is always greener on the other side, but it actually is greener. You know, it's that leap of hopping over that fence and discovering a new flower, or, you know, there's a lake on the other side of that mountain that you didn't see. Like, hop the fence and do something different. And had I not done that, I would have never met any of you guys, and I wouldn't be experiencing the things that I am right now with, you know, my education platform and, you know, mentorships, and, you know, having people who, I have so many people that message me that thank me for the artwork and how it's helped them overcome some of their personal, that, oh my God, there's nothing better than someone sending you a message and saying, you know, they have really struggled and this has given them the opportunity or the okay to create artwork that has helped them, you know, in a therapeutic way. There's nothing better than that. Why would we limit ourselves to 4 little walls? I mean, oh, you just have to keep growing. I just don't understand the idea of wanting to stay stagnant.
Yeah.
And wanting to stay on the same level.
I know for some people there's definitely a temptation for that because they've found a place that is, you know, relatively safe and successful, and then the idea of stepping outside of that and wondering kind of, well, what are your followers going to think, or are people still going to buy your work, or, you know, is it going to destroy everything that you've made? And the idea is so scary. So what would you say to people who want to explore that and want to be more creative, and maybe want to be creative in ways that are more true to who they are, but just don't know how to go about that, or where to start?
I don't think it has to be one or the other, though. You can, I mean, I can still do portraits.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, what I do now doesn't take away from my portraiture. It's just, they're just two completely different beasts, right? And
Sure.
I now put more of my focus into my artwork because I have the ability to do that, because I don't have to go out and, you know, search for clients every day with my portraiture, because I'm doing retouching.
Right.
So my personal time is spent, I do my retouching, and then any extra time I have can be spent creating my own artwork. So I'm very lucky, but I don't think it has to be one or the other. Be artistic and do that in a separate vein from your family sessions, or, you know, if you're a baby photographer, still do it. That it's just being creative and doing something for you as opposed to doing something for everybody else.
That's good. And do you think, is there anything that, or any advice you give to people on how they kind of start to explore that? I know for some people, a lot of people who think they're not creative and they're like, oh, I could never do that, I'm just not creative enough. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. Creativity is a muscle. Like, you can build that and grow that. So do you have anything that you'd like say to people in order to help them like start to build that up, or maybe give them a direction to go where they could explore their creativity?
I don't know, to be honest with you. Like, for me, I'll sit and I'll there's maybe a word that I hear that it sort of ignites something in me, and so I'll sit and I'll brainstorm the word, and then what does the word mean to me, and then what do I associate with those meanings, and that's sort of how I develop my concepts.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't know. I wish I had an answer, but I don't think I do. I think it's just giving yourself the allowance to do it instead of just saying, no, I can't do it. And I think human beings have a tendency to just say, oh, I'm not capable of it, so I'm not going to try. Well, try, and then give it a go. And if it's not what you want, then give it another go. And if you still don't like what you've created and you still want to create, then give it another go. And eventually things fall into place. It's just so quick to shut things down when we don't get immediate results. And I think that's probably the biggest issue.
I love that, giving yourself permission, because I feel like that's definitely something a lot of people have to remind themselves, that there's nothing that says you can't. Like, it's not as if you lack the ability. It really is just this idea that we get of, we try something once and we're not good at it and we go, oh, this isn't my thing. But the truth is that it's none of it, it's our thing. Like, some of us are drawn to certain areas, or maybe we have kind of a natural inclination toward those areas, but it takes just as much work for us as it does for anybody else. It's just that practice over time and that permission to fail, right? And to believe we can keep trying again, and that it will get better.
From a personal point of view, Nicole, do you feel like you're just naturally talented in art, or did you have to put in the time? Because I feel like anybody can have the talent if they put the time into it. I don't, like you said, I don't think that it's just ingrained in us. I think it's just something that we have an interest in, that we choose to put our time into. And like, do you feel like you just naturally have these abilities, or do you feel like you've trained yourself?
So I feel like there are definitely some things that maybe my starting point is a little bit higher than somebody else's starting point might be. Like my inclination on that thing is maybe the initial part. So I think we all take the same journey, right? We all start off not being good at something. Even if we have an inclination for it, we're not really, when you comparatively, like, we're not really good at it. But maybe the initial stages come easier for some people. Maybe they're more inclined in that area where they can pick up those kind of initial parts a little bit easier. And some people have to work a little bit harder to kind of get over that threshold. And that threshold, I think, is in different places for different people. But once you're past that point, all of us are just clawing our way to the top, like by desperate inches and fingernails. And that's, repetition and the ability to, keep trying even after we've failed a lot of times. It's this idea that failure doesn't mean you stop. It just is another lesson. And so all of that stuff, I think, everybody goes through that, whether, you're kind of inclined towards something or not. And that doesn't mean that we all end up in the same place either. There, I think, are some people who, for whatever reason, through a mixture of environment and ability and determination and, just where they're at in life, may end up here, and I might just get here. But there's nothing wrong with that. No. If I'm doing what's fulfilling to me, then it's still just as valid and just as important. And there are going to be people out there who connect with it on, a visceral, deep level. And so that makes it
worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a few comments I would love to get to because they're so great. So we have Jeremy joining us from the UK and says, both my daughters watching. So that's awesome. Hannah said it takes a leap of faith and strength to go back to the inner childlike imagination where anything is possible and creativity flourished. It's truly freeing once you tap into that kind of creativity. 100% agree. And I love that she mentioned that when we just talked about giving yourself permission, because you never have to give a little child permission to do anything imaginative. They just do it. Molly says, I always worry that I've lost that childlike imagination when it comes to creativity, but it is there. It is. And Sean says, I think you set a stage to redefined body image. We can see ourselves in new and different ways outside of typical portraits. It provides a fun escape from the typical.
Yeah, who wants to be typical? Ugh, so boring.
Right. For reals. Let's see. Olga's just like, do what you want.
I
can totally hear that coming out of her mouth too. Molly says, I think the pressure for me comes with wanting it to be beneficial for other people involved in the shoot, i.e. models and makeup artists. I think of failed shoots as test shoots and analyzing what worked and what didn't and why really helps to move forward in the next attempt. She's gonna go have dinner. But that's an interesting thing as far as feeling that pressure if you're collaborating with somebody else to make sure that you're giving them kind of, I hit my microphone, to make sure that you're giving them kind of usable stuff. But I also feel like with the kind of work you do, if people are agreeing to work with you, then it's because they want what you're doing.
Well, and it comes down to the idea of creating an image like this with the intention of a story and art. If you're walking into a fashion shoot and you're gonna then hop with your team members expecting that you're doing a fashion shoot, and then you go home and you edit like I edit and you retouch like I retouch, and then you send them their files, they're gonna be like, this was not our expectation.
Right.
what have you done here that it looks like nothing like me, or you've changed my makeup. So again, it just has to be a conversation that's being had. Even if you're going into a creative shoot and you say to your team, hey, there's something I want to try, are you guys okay if I use a couple of these images to practice, and I'll send them to you if it works out? Then they have no expectations of, sorry, then when those come in, you haven't ruined their expectations of what the shoot was going to be, right? You're still giving them what they need out of a shoot, but you're also using it to your benefit too. If they like it, great. And if they don't, then you don't have to look at it. It's my art.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it needs to be beneficial for everybody, and creativity is beneficial for everybody. So
agreed.
Work with the makeup artist, work with your model. Is there a story you guys want to tell? This is the story I have in my mind. I'm going to leave makeup up to you, and I'm going to leave the modeling up to you, and let's collaborate on the story then. But it has to be a conversation. It's as simple as a conversation.
Yeah, you absolutely have to set expectations. I think a lot of photographers unfortunately fall down in that area. Yeah. Even traditional portrait photographers with clients won't sit down beforehand and make sure that everybody's on the same level and that expectations are kind of set for what this is supposed to be. So that's a really important thing for people to do, for sure.
It sure is.
Hannah says that's true for me, and the technical part of photography is where I struggle, but that is where the time and persistence and practice will get me to my goal. I am an imaginative turtle. Yes. Yeah. I think the technical thing is definitely, that's just a time thing. Yeah. The technique of it, if you practice with a purpose, the technique comes. Yep. I think where most people fall really is in the creative, imaginative, the ability to kind of conceptualize what they want to say and find the right elements to help them tell that story.
I think, and this might be way off topic, but I think there are so many photographers in the photography industry that we feel like we don't have the time to stop and be creative and to create a story. And it's like, got to get out today and do a shoot, got to get out tomorrow and do a shoot, got to book a shoot for next week. Bam, bam, get it done in an hour, get home, get it edited, get it out there before somebody forgets about us. And I think because it's so oversaturated that we don't, as artists, we're not giving ourselves the chance to really deep dive into creatively what we want. And I would rather see one amazing, creative, beautiful image from somebody once a month than see 5 images a week that are just standard, typical, no story, and and rushed, and with the intention of just getting your work out there so that you're seen.
Right. Yeah. And I think social media exacerbates that a little bit in the way that we deal with each other, because there definitely is that pressure to remain relevant and to be putting out content and to be keeping attention. But I agree. I think when you're making work that really resonates and that is emotional, or that tells an important story, or that deals with a topic that's important to you, that kind of thing, I think those are worth, 5 weeks of daily posts.
Agreed.
So yeah, Ella said, say it again for the people in the back, quality over quantity. So is there anything that you do to kind of encourage that, or come up with ideas, or how do you go about finding things that you have to say?
I have a lot to say. I'm super opinionated. And if I said half of what I wanted to, I probably would have no friends.
I think that's true for most of us.
I mean, there's always an excess of things to be said, and it's just how you approach it. It's, we won't get into it all today, but it's even like the conversation you and I had earlier about inclusion. There's a way to approach that, and there's a story to be told there. I like my not latest piece, but like, because I haven't been doing anything because of COVID, but my Queen Bee is about motherhood. you know?
Right.
Bee, how does a bee have anything to do with motherhood? But it's about motherhood. And so we all have things to talk about, and we all have ideas. Again, just sit down and give yourself the okay to sit in your chair with a pen and a piece of paper and scribble and jot down ideas. And I think we just don't allow ourselves that time to be creative and to work that creative muscle. I just think we feel like we have to go all the time. So do I have, how do I come up with concepts and ideas? I don't know. I get in a fight with my kids and I'm like, turtle, like, I don't know. It's literally just about being creative, and how do you push your agenda without maybe being as in your face as you would if you were saying it directly to somebody. So how can we cushion that opinion or cushion that feeling and make it accessible for everybody, and everyone can form their own opinions on it, but we know what it means to us. So I don't know. I just want people to give themselves okay to be creative.
Yeah. I know when I'm writing, if I get to a point where I'm stuck in the story, I realize that I have to really withdraw myself from all of the distractions, right? Like I have to go for a walk, or I have to do something where I can run that scenario over in my head and work through it and try to think about how I can make it work, or what I'm really trying to say, or what the motivation for the character is, or what it is I'm trying to, accomplish, or whatever. You really do a lot of times just have to remove yourself from all of that stimulus that can either distract you or pull you away from it, or put pressure on you to be doing something else.
Well, and I don't think, if you're coming up with a concept for something, who says it has to be done in a day? Who says
Right.
it has to be done in a week? Who says it has to be done in a year? Just form a concept. Don't set time restraints for yourself. I'll often, jot down or sketch or write down ideas and then just put them away, and then they sit on my desk in a pile until the next time I'm feeling creative, and then I'll sit down with fresh eyes and go over it again. So I mean, I think we just set all these, it's again about stepping outside the box. We just set all these boundaries for ourselves, and I just think we have like these artificial limits of what we can accomplish, and like hop over the fence. People just, give yourself the okay to create. Just do it. It's like just that slogan, just do it. Just get it done. Just sit down for 10 minutes and sketch something, or sit down for 5 minutes and write down words that you find inspiring or interesting, or sit down for half an hour and meditate. Like, just give yourself the time to sit with yourself and be creative, instead of trying to fit in that stupid little box. I hate that box. The box.
Damn box.
Stupid box.
I can see you walking through your house having like cardboard boxes laying around just as symbols that you can kick every now and then, just be like, ah.
All my boxes only have like 3 sides, because who needs a box?
Right.
Have a 3
Unless
sides.
you have to like put stuff away, and then boxes are handy, but.
I'm gonna put stuff away. What are you talking about?
Right. Just, no, let it live its life. It's just trying to be free like everything else. Yeah, when I talk to people about that, or when I have people come to me and say, I wish I could do a thing, but I'm just not creative, it always breaks my heart, because we have this idea, I think, that creative people are something else. Like they are like some breed of person that just exists outside of normal people. And it's like, well, look, creativity is just problem solving, right? Like you want to say something and you're going about ways to find that you can say something. And creativity isn't limited to art. There are incredibly creative architects and engineers, and it's just about the way that you approach something. And so I wish that people would stop with this idea that creativity isn't something they have access to, because it's really a part of being human. And if you would just cultivate that and allow yourself the room for that, and then also to be okay with the fact that your first efforts are not going to be what you hope they are, and that's okay, because you can always come back to those ideas. You can always, somebody asked me this yesterday when I was doing an interview with Nino Batista, and we were talking about creativity and the permission to fail, and what, do you have any images you haven't created yet because you don't think you have the skill set for it? And what do you do then? And it's like, well, okay, you can set that aside for now, because I've done that certainly with things like books or other ideas that I can't do the production that it would require. But then other times it's like, no, just do it. Just do it. Even if you don't feel like you have the chops yet, just do it anyway. And if it's not what you hoped it was, then come back to it. Like, there's nothing stopping you from learning from that and going, okay, the light wasn't what I thought it was, or I need a different outfit, or the location needs it, whatever. Like, why you don't need to do the thing perfectly the first time.
Yeah, I agree. Just do it. And if it's not what your expectations were, then come back to it when you have cultivated those necessary things in order to create this amazing piece that you want. I mean, it will happen. You just have to put the effort in, right? I mean, if you don't put the effort in, you're never going to get to where you want to be. And again, does everyone have this creative bone or not? You got to work on it, plain and simple.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hannah says, just dive in with abandon. Time doesn't matter. Nope. Yeah. I had you can't see my whiteboards, but one of the things I had written on there was salto mortale, which kind of loosely means leap into the void. And I just find that idea so powerful, because it is really that just being like, just go. And that's a really interesting thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately and talking to some people about. But we have to overcome inertia, right? Like, it's everything is working against you to keep you inside the box, right? Like, your brain is working against you because your brain wants to protect you from failure, because failure damages your self-identity. So your brain is like, don't do the thing. People might not like the thing. If you mess up, you're going to feel really bad about yourself. So stay inside here. And then we have other people's opinions that we worry about, and all of these things kind of conspiring to stop us from doing the thing. And if we would just take that initiative and give ourselves that permission to not be good at it, it's okay if you're not good at it at first. Yeah. The good comes with time. That's what you build, right?
Nope, I agree. Upper limit issues, right? We're all so afraid that we're not going to succeed at something that we attempt, and end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Right. It doesn't matter. And so I know you know this about me, but I get trapped by my own thoughts. Like, I'm like, well, if I can think my way around it, I feel like if I just attack it from all angles, then eventually I'm going to come up with some answer. And once I have everything in line, then I will go. But the problem is that then you never go. It's better just to go and figure it out on the way than it is to keep sitting and not ever actually take the step.
Agree. Because where are you going to be in a year? Where are you going to be in 2 years? Are you going to be sitting
still
in the same
thinking
and waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting for your puzzle pieces to fit in? Screw that. Cut your own puzzle pieces.
Right.
You don't need to fit in anywhere.
I agree. Hannah says that she's had projects that have taken 3 years to finish.
Yeah.
But those are worth it, right? Like, when it all comes together.
Oh, for sure. I want something that takes me 3 years to finish, because then it's like winning the lottery when it's done. Like, that feeling of elation must just be amazing. I mean, and it must be like that with you for writing a book too, this long drawn out process of writing, and then to actually have that physical copy in front of you must just be mind blowing.
What's really crazy about that is that it's more of a relief than anything else. It's like, oh God, thank God I can be done now. And I think that's because, like, the biggest joy, like, in the process, the biggest joy is actually the writing of it, like sitting down and watching something come to life in your head, like seeing it happen and living with these characters and all of that. Like, that for me is the biggest joy. And then when you're done, in a strange way, which I've heard Olympic athletes actually talk about before, not to like compare myself to Olympic athletes, but just this idea of like working on one thing until you get to the pinnacle of that thing. In a way, there's almost a letdown, almost a depression, like, well, now it's done. And I don't have a thing now, because it's, what do you
turn?
It's not, well, it's just an interesting thing. It's like, what do you do now? As like a military spouse, I'm so used to my husband being gone. And for a long time, he was gone a lot. And it was always like, well, when he comes home, we're going to do this. And when he comes home, life will change. And when he comes home. So that finally, when he did come home, I fell into this depression because he was here now. And like, what am I waiting for now? Like, what am I aiming toward now? And so I think that project, when it finally reaches completion, in a way, it's almost like, oh, there it goes. It's like, it's done. And now what do I do? But the great thing about being a creative person is that there's always a new thing to chase, right? Like there's always a new idea or and it's that process of making, at least for me, where I really find like the joy and the fulfillment. And I like this idea of do what you would be happy failing at.
Ooh, I like it.
I think that is a really powerful, I want to say, I've talked about impact theory before, the YouTube show, but these interviews with these different amazing people, but I think that that's such a powerful thing because you can fail at anything. So why not fail at something that you love the process of anyway?
Everything. And then you'll have something you succeed at.
Yeah.
I'm okay with being a failure. I don't have a problem with it. I'll fail at everything. But there are things that I'm good at. And I'd rather say I failed at something and tried than I didn't try at all. So
yeah, that's the man in the arena. Have you ever heard that speech by Teddy Roosevelt? Oh, if you ever get the chance.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's my favorite. I mean, he's my favorite. But...
Caring greatly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I've
Let's all be failures together.
And then, and the thing is, the journey, it's all in the journey.
Yeah.
All of it is. And then when you finish a thing, that's part of the journey as well. Because what does it mean when you're finished life? Like you're dead now. Like that's where this goes. Like that's where this ends. So the journey is the important part. Like the point of life is to live.
Stories to be told about our lives.
Right. Yeah. And the point of making art is to make, because someday you won't be able to make anymore.
That just made me real sad.
Well, I mean, eventually this world is, we're going to be done with this part of our journey. And so just keep making. I mean, let's see. Olga said, I take 3 years because procrastination. I feel that in my soul, girl. I feel that in my soul. Ella says, I have experienced that a lot with shows and concerts, recitals, etc. growing up as a kid. Olga said, send help. And Sarah said, ideas eat at me if I don't work on them, like a bad dream. And that I can definitely identify with. There are some things where you build that and then it sits there on your shoulder, like, when are you going to do the thing? I will, I swear.
I'm having tea, leave me alone.
It's so uncomfortable. It's like,
stop breathing my ear, idea.
Yeah, like on my neck and stuff. Like you can see my body language. It makes me uncomfortable just thinking about it. I'm like,
Everybody now has goosebumps.
Yeah, I did too. I was like, whoa, it's on there. Like, and that's very much for books for sure. Like those, you get those and that's a story that you have to tell, and it just sits away like, pecking and you're just like, God. Hannah said, I have projects that go in time out because I cannot figure out how to make it. And I set it aside and start expiring. I think she means exploring new mediums. And one day find the light goes off and I dust off that old project and it finally takes shape.
Yeah. I love it.
Yep.
And I mean, Hannah's work.
I know Hannah photographs her own work, but I really want to photograph Hannah's work. So you're like, oh.
So you're going to send some of that to me, right?
Right? Hannah, come on. Give. I know. I was telling her I would really love to see a gallery show with her images along with the pieces that she has created, because they're so complex and beautiful. And I do not have that kind of patience, like the patience to make a thing over years. I'll be up just for 8 days, like not sleeping, just like, I have to finish. The children haven't eaten. The house hasn't been cleaned. Like I've emaciated now. I'm just like, no, finish the thing.
As it's breathing in your ear.
Yeah, it's so bad. But that flow state is such an amazing place to be, don't you think? When you're like, when you are in that process of creating, like, you don't want to leave that spot.
No, I'm okay. I'm honestly okay with that. Like I said, there's no better feeling for me than sitting down and losing a day and then realizing that I've spent an entire day just immersed in this piece of art that I can be proud of because I've spent the time. And again, who cares what anybody else thinks? You're just so happy that you've had that time to sort of express yourself. So it's a wonderful experience. Creativity for the win.
I agree. I agree. Hannah says, my art is like a baby. So far, they are not up for adoption.
Okay, Hannah.
I know, but still, I'm just super jealous. That's all.
This whole thing. Just not giving shout outs to Hannah anymore. She's not going to share.
Yeah. And I think that idea of like, if you have a chance to get in a flow state with something creative, why not take advantage of that? Because you don't always get to live there. You have the rest of your life where other things have to happen. So when that time comes to like really completely invest yourself in the creative moment, like, man, why not?
Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Why not? What do you have to lose?
Right. Right. And I love the idea. Tolkien considered the characters in his books and the world that he built, he called them sub-creations. And I really love that because I feel like once you have made a thing, then it goes on to have a life of its own and it lives beyond you and it affects other people and it continues to kind of move on its own journey outside of you. And it's good to know that those things exist.
I agree. That made my heart flutter a little bit. I think that's really powerful because it's the truth. You don't realize the impact that your work has on other people. And why would you, out of fear, not create things that have the possibility to impact other people? So
yeah, agreed. The world needs your voice, guys.
Yep.
I think there's somebody out there who's got a lock in here and you have the key and you can't let fear stop you from sending that out into the world.
Fear is so overrated.
It really is. I think once we can recognize what it is, recognize that it's just our brain trying to protect us. That's really all that it is. It's brain going, there's danger over there. And then you have to recognize, okay, that's my brain's protection mode, but I don't have to listen to it. Like recognize it. Okay, set it aside and then do the thing anyway.
Yeah. It's funny because I wasn't sure how this was going to go, and I had a few notes in case you were going to have me like talk about specific topics or ask me if there was anything I wanted to talk about. And I literally have written down that our happiness, we put our own personal limits on our own happiness and what we accomplish, and realizing it is what will help us to break through that. So, I mean, we're obviously on the same wavelength here, because you do have to realize that those are literally just mental blocks that you have to get past. And there's just so much more out there once you realize that even though you're feeling limited, that isn't the end of your story. You can break through that. So I like that we're on the same wavelength.
I know.
Right. Think you're
creative people get together. I know. My friend. So we are like right up on our hour limit. So people in the comments section, guys, if you have any more questions or comments, get those in now so we can address them before we have to leave. Remember, all of Kelly's information, her links and everything is going to be in the description of the YouTube video. Don't forget that she has educational tutorials out on ProEDU, so you can go there and check those out if you would love to kind of dive into her style and learn how you can take that and then use it in your own work. And then Kelly, you also have something through Sumarana, is that right?
No, I don't think it's offered anymore, actually.
Okay.
It
was a short time
like
thing.
1 month thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, definitely check out ProEDU for that. And go give her a follow on Instagram, show that love. Is there anything, Kelly, that you want to address or kind of get out there into the world before we close?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered everything. I just want to see the creativity, and send me a message and show me your work, and you know, don't copy, just find your own voice and find your own creativity and just create, just do it. Just jump over that ledge and just do it. So that's all.
Agreed. So where can people find you?
Kelly Robitaille Photography on Facebook, Kelly Robitaille on Instagram, www.kellyrobitaille.com, on the ProEDU site, floating around Facebook somewhere. I'm always
out in the ether. She's just out in the ether watching everything. She's watching everything. She's watching.
Have you seen my eyes? I definitely am watching.
Oh, we're both watching through our glasses. Yeah. All right. Thank you, lady. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and end the live stream, and then I'll say goodbye to you in private. But for everybody who joined us, thank you guys, Sarah and Hannah and Molly and Olga and Ella, just everybody who came in. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out. If you enjoyed this, if you think that the content is worthwhile, I would love it if you would subscribe, maybe like this, share it if you think other people could benefit from the kind of amazing inspiration that Kelly has as she's like kicking your butt into gear to go be creative. And tomorrow, please join me. It is the 22nd at 3 p.m. I'm going to be here with incredible artist Tyler Jacobson. You've seen his work if you've ever played Magic the Gathering, if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons. He has also worked for Toyota and Sports Illustrated and a whole bunch of other people. His work is incredible, and I'm just going to grill him for everything he's got. So please be here tomorrow for that, and so you can ask all the questions. And until then, until tomorrow, have a good one, guys.
Bye.